Hello friends, I'm here to tell you guys about tianeptine. Tianeptine is a drug that has two mechanisms that are recognized in the academic literature. One, it agonizes opiate receptors. Two, it blocks glutamate receptors, particularly one group of them called the NMDA receptors. Obviously you guys know what opiates do and what the opiate receptors do. The NMDA receptors are involved in the signaling of a neurotransmitter called glutamate. Glutamate is sort of the polar opposite of GABA. It is the main excitatory neurotransmitter in the nervous system. If you block all of the glutamate receptors, you will not be able to learn, you will not be able to form memories. And if you block one group of them, the NMDA receptors, you may inhibit this slightly. You may also protect your brain a little bit because too much glutamatergic signaling can cause damage to the brain, can cause what we always talk about, excitotoxicity, which is when neurons die because of too much signaling. And it can cause deteriorations of other kinds as well, and oxidative stress and all other kinds of stuff as well. So that's the pharmacology that's in the academic papers, and that's what I knew beforehand. I had a client who has been booking some consultations with me, who I like very much and I wish the best for. And he seems to have been addicted to tianeptine for some time, and he tried to get off it. He used ibogaine, and he eventually went back to it. When I inquired as to what was, because this is the thing, when someone's addicted to a drug that they use daily, sometimes it can happen by accident, but usually it's because a person is not happy with how their brain functions normally. So usually it's difficult to just quit the drug without trying to address the brain function behind the situation that may be causing them to want to use the drug. And I thought we addressed that, but this client described to me a feeling from tianeptine that was pro-social, which really attracted to him and made him want to go back to the drug. Anyway, I feel somewhat uncomfortable advising people about anything that I've never done before myself. Most of the supplements or drugs that I mentioned on this channel I've used either sparingly or extensively in my own experience. I never used tianeptine, so I felt like somewhat at a loss of words of what to tell this client, so I decided to try it myself. So I tried a few doses of tianeptine. Tianeptine usually comes in a sodium version as well as a sulfate version. The sodium version is quicker acting. the sulfate version is quicker acting. The sodium version is a bit longer acting. I obviously got the sodium version because something that's quicker acting usually causes more excitotoxicity from dopamine or other things like that. So I didn't want to cause too much damage to my brain. And also the client is using sodium. So the medicinal dose is considered to be 25 milligrams of tianeptine. I tried 10 milligrams, 25 milligrams. I found out the client was using 300 milligrams 3 times a day, so I tried 100, 200, 300, 400 milligrams, and I tried a couple of doses of them. What I noticed overall is this. At a very low dose, like 20 milligrams, 25 milligrams, you get an almost imperceptible dopamine transmission, which comes consequent to the opiate agonism, I think. When you go to higher doses of 100 milligrams to 300 milligrams, obviously you still get the dopaminergic effect, you get a noticeable opiate effect, the itchiness and all these kind of things, a sedative effect from the opiate, and then you begin to get this NMDA receptor antagonism, which is very noticeable. You see, I take huperzine A almost every day. Huperzine A is a very effective glutamate NMDA receptor antagonist, a blocker of those receptors. It seems, although I've not actually found academic papers that were assaying the affinity of the tianeptine drug to the NMDA receptor, so I'm not quite sure. But from experiencing it myself, at least at the high doses of 100 milligrams to 300 milligrams, it is such an effective blocker of the NMDA receptors that I was not able to form memories while on it. It was really a bizarre feeling. I've never actually felt this feeling before. Very difficult to form memories. Like you can be studying something, go back to it, you didn't learn anything, even though you're completely aware at the time. So I think this is because it's blocking what's called long-term potentiation, which is one of the theories for how memories are formed in the brain. If you block the NMDA receptors, you can also block that. So those are some of my the things I noticed. Now, just for you guys to know, there are a bunch of drugs that do exactly this. Agonize opiate receptors and block NMDA receptors. For some reason, these things seem to go hand in hand. Maybe it's because the molecular structure required to activate those two things is so similar. So for example, ketamine is a famous NMDA receptor antagonist. That's where most of its pharmacology or at least the hallucinogenic effect comes from. But it is also a opiate agonist, which I believe is the real reason I mean, the real reason people use it for depressive symptoms. Like right now, there's a nasal spray called esketamine. And I think the effect that that nasal spray does is cause a little bit of dopamine transmission right afterwards. But there are other drugs as well. So the drug most similar to tianeptine, I think, is a drug called dextromethadone. Methadone has two isomer forms. If you guys remember from my liquid handcuffs video, dextromethadone is an NMDA receptor antagonist and a mu opiate receptor agonist, just like this drug, but it's much longer acting, obviously. NMDA antagonism actually increases the analgesic effect of opiate drugs. So it actually decreases the amount of the drug you need, it decreases the amount of agonism you need at the opiate receptor to be able to get the result that you want. So generally it would be useful, but the thing is, another thing I'd like to mention also about tianeptine. So there are two Reddits on tianeptine that I know of. There's the r/tianeptine, there's the r/quitting tianeptine. That's how bad that issue is. And what I noticed there is that some of these tianeptine addicts have tried to inject tianeptine into their veins, and they've had serious vein issues with it. So they've had like collapsed veins or like some kind of damage to the blood vessel immediately there, making people think that the chemical tianeptine is highly reactive. When I took tianeptine, I felt a similar thing, even though obviously I was swallowing it. But I have a sort of very sensitive feeling for my body, and I felt something quite toxic going on. I don't know if the chemical is very reactive or not. It's not been studied that extensively in humans. And a final thing I want to mention is people have different degrees to which they could become addicted to opiates quickly. Like, for example, for me, it's actually quite difficult. I don't get much of a benefit from using opiates in terms of a sedative or I mean, I do get a sedative effect, but I don't get much of a... I'm not very drawn to opiates. Like, there are some people who use an opiate and they feel like it brings them home, it makes them so comfortable, it makes them who they want to be. I'm naturally not so much like that, and of course also the way my lifestyle is right now, it's very difficult for me to get tempted to become addicted to things. But what I'm trying to tell you guys is not everyone's going to have the same response to this drug. Definitely you can't use it every day without becoming addicted, but there are some people maybe they'd be able to use it once or twice a week without becoming addicted, whereas other people probably can't. But in general, I don't think there would be any benefit from using this drug at all. There's always, I think, better drugs. If you're trying to block the NMDA receptors, there's so many drugs, we discussed them in the agmatine video, but the one I use is huperzine A, which is a supplement, and I think it's the ideal one to use. If you really needed to, you don't need to agonize the opiate receptors unless you have severe pain, and in which case you should consult a doctor. So generally, I'm a teetotaler. I don't like to get intoxicated, or I don't find that stuff beneficial. I think it takes people out of the way of their path in life. I don't think you should cause dopamine release when you don't want it to, because it's a habituating thing. I'm not for that kind of lifestyle, but I couldn't really advise my client without knowing exactly what it felt like. So now that I do, I hope maybe I could benefit other people by also telling you guys a little bit more about it. I know not everyone has tried it. I highly recommend you do not try this. Do not waste your time. There's no value. It's very difficult to get much out of an opiate drug in terms of benefits without harm. It's like, it's not a path that you want to go down. And this one is just neurotoxic, ineffective. It's nasty, in my opinion. It's a nasty drug. It's not worth it. So anyway, that's what I want to tell you guys. I hope this is helpful. Stay away from this stupid drug and try your best to avoid it. And if you are addicted to tianeptine, there's the Quitting Tianeptine subreddit, and you can find other resources as well, I'm sure. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you guys next time.